Shabbat Shalom, everyone. So we stood together, we read the 10 Commandments, the 10 laws that changed the world. They're so well known, but when we look at them closely, we realize they are so unknown. They are probably the list of one of the most mistranslated and misunderstood texts that we'll ever encounter. We will hear people quoting them and say, it says in the Bible, it says in the 10 Commandments, thou shalt not kill. It actually never says thou shalt not kill. It says thou shalt not murder. There's a huge difference because in certain moments we are actually commanded to engage even to the point of taking someone's life, when it's self-defense, when we're protecting ourselves and protecting others. Murder is the taking of an innocent life. That's what the 10 Commandments tells us we must never do. Commandment number 3 says not to take God's name in vain. That does not mean that we should not say, excuse me, God damn it. It's not polite to say that, it's rude to say that, it's not respectful to say that, but it's got nothing to do with the 10 Commandments. The 3rd commandment is telling us something very specific we should not be doing. We should not be invoking God's name in an oath, actually pledging ourselves to it, and then lie. That's what it's telling us not to do. So when we look at it, we say, okay, what do we know? Well, the first thing we know is it's the first time we're encountering ethical laws. They're not laws about ritual. They're not laws about any of the other stuff. It's ethical laws. And that's actually unusual, that we're getting a list that's touching on ethics. It also tells us it's the first thing the Torah told us is written. Everything else until then, we've been told, we heard, it's been passed down. But this one gets written down. Why is that important? Because it's going to change us. It's telling us that now everybody needs to learn to read. Because to access it, we're going to have to be literate. That's a huge shift in our culture, in our society, in where we've raised the bar to say we will teach each other to read so that we can all access. And then we're commanded to educate. And we're commanded to say, now make sure everybody's literate. Because we just wrote those things down. It becomes a huge transition for us. And then we're commanded to read it because we're literate and read it out loud so we can hear it. We can hear it when someone else reads it. And now what's happening is we're engaging several of our senses in order to access it. That's multisensory processing. So we've upped the game quite a bit just by simply saying we wrote it down. It actually changes everything. And when we look at the event itself of receiving the 10 Commandments, Moses was supposed to bring them down the mountain to us, and he decides to break them. We're now watching and listening to divine intent subverted by human free will. God intended that they come down the mountain. Moses said no. So everything about that moment and what's going on is far more layered than we thought it was. And then we look at the history of how we've used the 10 Commandments. So we know we used it for legal purposes. We built our legal structure around it, yes. But then we also know historically, through rabbinic literature, that we used to use it as liturgy. We used to recite it in our prayers, biblical liturgy. We would do that during temple times. In the temple, we would recite the 10 Commandments. And then what started to happen was there started to be internal discord, external attacks on the thing, and it changed how we use it. The first thing that happened was the rabbi said nobody recited as liturgy, as prayer, outside of the temple. Because we have minim, we have sectarians, we have heretics, and they're actually using the 10 Commandments to tell us only the 10 Commandments were recited by God. Ignore everything else. So we're pulling back now on centralizing on them. And as we move through history, once the church develops and says that the only religious law that must be kept are the 10 Commandments, none of the other laws are relevant or need to be kept, that's when we entirely remove it from our liturgy, and we only leave the Shema as biblical liturgy. We've taken the 10 Commandments out. When we look and we say, well, how are we supposed to be reading these things? Is it 10? Really? Where did we get that? What are these things? We can go back to the ancient word world to Philo, one of our Jewish philosophers who lived in the 1st century before the Common Era, and he already wrote, they're not 10 commandments, they're 10 categories. We're not supposed to look at them as commandments. We're supposed to look at them as the categories in which we put all the other commandments. So there's hundreds of those commandments. It's not 10. And immediately we hear that we've been questioning that number 10 almost from the get-go. And when you read the text closely and you're listening to all the things it's telling you, the number quickly increases from 10. You're not going to be able to walk away and say, I was told 10 things. We're told dozens of things in the course of the text that we call the 10 Commandments. So how do we understand them? For instance, commandment number 2 that's going to tell us, don't make a graven image. Don't make an image of an idol. Don't make a graven image. We get that. We've got that. That's pretty simple. But then it goes on to say, not just of God, but of anything that exists on earth or under the heavens. And now you're thinking, wow, were we just forbidden art? Were we just told that we cannot make images of anything? And there are, in fact, huge portions of the Jewish world that do not make images of anything. Visual art is off limits because of how the various commandments are being understood within that one commandment. So it gets more and more complex. And when we look at it, we also begin to question physically, what came down the mountain? What was Moses holding? What did we get at the end of the day? We're told there are 2 tablets. Are they duplicates of each other? Are they 2 tablets that are identical, separate? And if we view it as a contract, we do need 2, because there's party of the first part, party of the second part. We would have to have 2. So are they duplicates of each other, or are they 2 tablets with 5 on one, 5 on the other, in which case, why 2? Why not just have 1 tablet with 5 on one and 5 on the other? And when we look at the art of the 10 Commandments, we see the confusion. Because sometimes there is 1 tablet with 5 on one, 5 on the other, lined up 1 to 5, and then, of course, 6 on. So exactly what? What physically came down? If it's a list and there's 10 of them, why put 5 on one, 5 on the other side? Just list 10. What's the significance of doing that if, in fact, we did that? So we're trying to, again, understand exactly what did it look like. And then we go to that first commandment, I am the Lord your God. And now, of course, the debate's going to start. Is that a commandment to say, I am the Lord your God? Or is that an introduction? And then the commandments start counting after that first one. In which case, number 10, the one about coveting, we got to split that one in 2, or we won't get the number 10. So we're looking at it, trying to understand what that first one is. And in fact, many of the translations and outside renditions of the 10 Commandments, many of the churches do not count the first commandment as a commandment, the I am statement. They split the covet into 2. That is not how we read it. We read the first commandment as a commandment. I am the Lord your God. I command you to struggle with that one. I command you to challenge yourself with the I am statement. You cannot turn a blind eye to your spirituality. Struggle with it. Figure it out. You are commanded to open that door. That is the first commandment. And then the Torah tells us it's written on both sides of the tablets, and now we're trying to understand both sides. Does that mean it's written on the right side and the left side? So now I understand why we lined them up that way? Or does that mean it was written on the front and the back? Both sides, how? How am I understanding what a side is? And of course, then what happens is we turn to the Talmud, and the Talmud says something astounding. It says front and back. Not left and right, front and back. And in fact, it tells us it's not etched, it's carved, so that each letter goes through to the other side. It's carved through, front and back. And now you wonder, wow, could you even read that? And how does it not crumble in front of us when you're carving at it that way? But the Talmud insists it is, so that when I am standing in front of it, I read one side, but I can see the letters of the other side coming through. So I simultaneously see both sides of it. And now what happens is the physicality of the tablets become the symbol of our worldview. When I read it top down, I see that the first 4 commandments are dealing with the upper realms. They're dealing with God. They're dealing with images of God. They're dealing with how I invoke God's name. They're dealing with Shabbat. They're dealing with everything from the upper realm. The last commandments, the last ones, are dealing with everything in the lower realms. How do I deal with my fellow human beings? I don't steal their things. I don't murder. It's all about the lower realms. Number 5 is the one about our parents, where it says, honor your father and your mother, and the Talmud tells us there's your bridge. That's what's bridging between the upper realms and the lower realms, that one. Our parents are the ones who partnered with God in order to create us. They bridged between the upper realms and the lower realms. And now I look at it and I understand, just from looking at how physically it's laid out, that I exist both in the holy and in the mundane, and that I should search for my bridges. I should search for the things in life that are going to allow me to flow between those two. And when I read the front, I still see the back. So now I'm being told my worlds will overlap. I will not be able to live only in one. I will always be glimpsing the other, whether I'm in the upper realms glimpsing the mundane or I'm in the mundane glimpsing the holy. They will always speak to me. They will always overlap. And because I'm facing it reading one, but I can see the one on the back coming through, they've now lined up. So they've created pairs, which means it's as if I've lined up the 10 Commandments down the left, down the right, but instead of reading top down, I'm reading across. And now I've created messages of pairs. The first commandment will tell me, I am the Lord your God. I created life. And when I read across, it says, thou shalt not murder. And it makes perfect sense because I'm not the creator of life. I cannot take it. It is showing me how my understanding of my spirituality informs my daily life and my society. And likewise, when I go down the list, the next one will say, you will not have any other God. Do not make other gods. And it lines up with no adultery. So I understand we're talking about loyalty. We're talking about commitment. We're talking about exclusivity. Upper realms, lower realms. I suddenly hear it. Each pair teaches me that my spiritual understanding of things shapes my mundane daily world. The things I hold in my soul will guide the things I do all day long. In the end, we debated and debated and debated, and we agreed to the number 10. We know we'll never exhaust how we read them. We'll never exhaust how we imagine them. We'll never exhaust that they're just miraculous in their physicality. We'll always come back for more meaning and more understanding of them. And it makes perfect sense, because calling them the 10 Commandments is what we call them in English. In Hebrew, they're always called Aseret Hadibrot, the 10 utterances of God. They're actually never to be seen as simply 10 Commandments. Shabbat Shalom.